Brace yourself, because you're going to the wall.
There was no bottom to the well. Government could give us everything. And now, when governments all over Canada, and especially in Saskatchewan, are broke and they're in trouble, the people are turning on the politicians.
End of the line for Saskatchewan. End of the line for 2 or 3 other provinces. Some other people have got some running room left, but it's getting to be end of the line for all of them.
Sunday, April 18th, W5 with Eric Malling.
My home province, Saskatchewan, is in a terrible mess. Ontario has been cracking open because of debt, but for its size, the debt in Saskatchewan is more than twice as high. The debt is $15 billion, $15,000 per capita. Doesn't sound so bad? Well, lump in the federal debt and look at the number of taxpayers. Saskatchewan has a real problem. If you divide the province into mythical families of 4, the combined government debt is $140,000 for each of them, more than most mortgages. The interest is real and relentless, and there's no new house to show for it. We're talking about Saskatchewan in particular tonight, but really all of us in principle. It's about the price of politics. The clue to understanding Saskatchewan's debt is down the stairs into the finished basement, the rumpus room. It's in the paneling, the carpet, the wet bar topped with the ornate ice bucket, just like the mace in Parliament. It's a wonder there's any wildlife left, let alone credit. Other provinces got into the mire with Olympic stadiums, nuclear reactors. Saskatchewan splurged on rumpus rooms, government money, to carpet the whole downstairs.
Thanks for coming here.
Now Premier Roy Romano, a good NDPer, has to go out in public and talk like Margaret Thatcher. Face 10,000 sullen farmers in a hockey rink and tell them to think about this in their rumpus rooms.
The biggest per capita, per person debt in Canada by a country mile. $760 million of your taxes this year and every year go to Zurich, Hong Kong, Tokyo, London, Toronto, and New York just to pay the interest on the public debt without even touching the debt, and that sum is more than twice the total amount of money spent on agriculture.
Increased by 22%.
Then move on to the Chamber of Commerce. Like the farmers, business loved getting handouts, but now the bankers down east are calling the shots. One report?
The Canadian fiscal situation ranges from bad federally to painful in Quebec, to ghastly in Ontario, to terrifying in Saskatchewan.
But try telling that to your friends, the trade unions who helped elect you. Government employees are on rotating strike, and there's nothing much going on at the welfare office today because the social workers are feeling abused.
We don't feel things are that bad. Saskatchewan isn't that bad off.
Does anybody have any sympathy with Roy Romano here? He says he's got no money, the province is going broke, and you guys are supposed to be his friends.
He's one person.
Friendship's a two-way street.
They're burning out our workers. Like, I'm a support staff. We've got 3 people doing, our office has more than doubled, and we have the same support staff.
What happens if you do nothing?
Well, what happens if we do nothing is we will be unable to sustain the operations of government.
But what does that mean? Civil servants don't get paid, the roads don't get paved?
Well, I think that immediately is one of the possibilities. I think
close up schools?
Well, I think that's a possibility. I think what is even a more immediate possibility is this, that we may be in jeopardy, in default of our financial obligations. And in blunt, simple terms, people say that's bankruptcy, and we can't allow that.
2 things to understand about Saskatchewan. First, people who didn't live through the Depression were raised on talk of it, endless talk of the dirty 30s. It's made them cautious, careful with a dollar, even tight. The other thing is, people in Saskatchewan take their politics very seriously. They follow what happens in politics as closely as the football or hockey or baseball scores. They care about government. They're literate about power. So why would this, of all places, become the financial basket case of North America?
Maybe it was too much politics. In 1982, solid plod-along Saskatchewan was plain and simple fed up with Alan Blakeney, the NDP premier for 11 years. Apart from investment in Crown corporations, Blakeney preached pay-as-you-go, balanced budgets.
Don't let anyone ever tell you that they are going to get the money to finance a tax cut by avoiding a capital expenditure.
Dull, dull, dull. Bring on a fresh face. Grant Devine and his conservatives. NDP and Liberal governments had balanced the books in all but 3 of the last 38 years, ever since the war. Enough talk about that.
The first order in council, the first thing we ever do, you just line up the pumps on Tuesday morning, because you're going to save 40 cents a gallon because the road tax is coming off Saskatchewan's energy.
No gas tax. What a promise. Let's party, be just like Alberta. How could Blakeney counter that? Something with a little zip.
Another health care first for the people of Saskatchewan. Universal dental care.
There'd be free glasses, too, but gradually, as the province could afford it.
We were optimistic, but this is fantastic.
No contest. Cheap gas beat free false teeth.
When they said, can you help us in terms of paying for our homes or give us a break at the gas pumps, and we said yes, boy, they really responded.
Who wouldn't? With 34-cent gas, the government was losing about $8 on every fill-up. And that cost Devine over the years close to $1 billion. But there was more. A party for the oil companies, reduced royalties. That little break, along with falling prices, shrank the resource take from 28% of government revenue down to just 10. And finally, subsidized home mortgages, 100 million more. The debt was rolling. Devine's government would end up borrowing $1,000 per person per year to finance the politics. What would Tommy Douglas think? The godfather of the CCF come NDP ran Saskatchewan from 1944 to 1961, and the straight-laced preacher couldn't abide a spendthrift. His government waited 18 years to make good on Medicare because it wouldn't borrow money.
Young fellow up there booing, I want to tell him that there's a bus leaving for Manitoba in an hour, and that kid should be under it.
And then came Ross Thatcher, a hard-nosed liberal. Except for election night, not a real party kind of guy. He slapped a $1.50 user fee on Medicare, which was politically lethal, but for Thatcher, the only financially prudent thing to do.
Every year we balanced our budget. The surpluses we're leaving for these birds around here, it just makes me cry almost.
Retired Senator Davy Stewart was Thatcher's finance minister.
Ross Thatcher was convinced, and I think Tommy Douglas felt the same way, coming out of the Depression, and the Saskatchewan people didn't like debt. And so they were very strong against borrowing. And the idea of borrowing, especially borrowing to pay the day-to-day bills that they're doing now, just was never thought of. It would be like going into a grocery store and using your Visa card to pay for the weekly groceries. It isn't even allowed, or it wasn't in Saskatchewan.
Grant Devine.
Some Visa. Devine, in his first term, upped spending 60%, while revenue went up only 5%. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. Resource prices were plummeting, and then at election time in '86, drought on the farm. Devine used horse and buggy economics. Don't say whoa in a mud hole. So for the farmers, he wrestled $1 billion out of his friends in Ottawa and put up another $1 billion himself in 6% loans, $25 an acre, whether they needed it or not.
I'm told that went into a lot of new pickup trucks and winters in Phoenix.
That's right. Of course it did. But I know one farmer that didn't need it, and he invested it and got the difference. And he said when he went south, it paid his golf fee. So he just laughed about it. I said, why did you take it? He says, wouldn't you? And I said, I probably would, yeah.
Who could resist? And there was more good politics.
The program is designed, obviously, for the family.
Devine announced cheap loans and matching grants of up to $1,500 for home renovation. They built rumpus rooms with it. They built garages and decks. The carpet went down everywhere. The spree lasted 4 years and cost $360 million, and a lot of that went into swimming pools, hot tubs, and jacuzzis. At Burn Lumber in Saskatoon, they were lined up 20 deep at the door the day it was announced.
The idea was anything fixed. That meant fixed microwaves, that meant swimming pools, that meant drapes, that meant rugs, that meant just about if you could fix a pool table to the ground, the men fixing a pool table to the ground. You know, it was absolute stupidity.
I mean, why would you complain about it? Surely it was good for business.
Yeah, well, yeah, we were cleaning up on it, sure, but still, you know, why should I buy the deck that you're drinking your beer on?
In the finest, most expensive furniture store in Regina, they sold more rugs for the next 3 months, more expensive rugs in the next 3 months than ever sold in their history. Now, this was something that people needed. They could afford to buy rugs at $20 or $30 a square yard and have the government give them half. Crazy nonsense.
But Devine reveled in it, a photo opportunity at the carpet store where they had to hire 4 more people. And on to the Rotary Club for a little bragging.
They feel good about the new home. They feel good about their new carpet. They feel good about their new doors. They feel good about their garage. And they feel good because they're creating the jobs right there. They are, right there.
Oh, created a lot of jobs for everybody out of the province.
What do you mean?
Well, everybody came in from Toronto and everybody came in from Vancouver and Alberta, worked and left.
So lots of aluminum siding salesmen moving through.
Exactly.
And where was Alan Blakeney with his good gray government? Well, the polls showed that people were too busy renovating to worry about debt. So Blakeney waded in with an even richer scheme, $7,000 grants and 7% mortgages for 7 years.
How do you explain 86 coming by your hot tub?
Well, of course, the feeling right across Canada was, not just in Saskatchewan, that it was B2 society and there's something for nothing. And the Saskatchewan legislature in the last 15 years hasn't been a real place where they sit down and debate policy sensibly or even wickedly or wildly. It's been an auction house. The highest bidder gets the government. The people have been part of this seduction. They've played a part in it.
Still, Stewart was proud of his boy, Liberal leader Ralph Goodale.
Endless promises to buy your vote. It costs a bundle. Since 1984, $1,200 more tax for the average family. Call off the bidding. Tell them no sale.
Vote Liberal.
But they didn't. Devine trounced Blakeney again, the rumpus rooms went in, and Goodale was the only Liberal elected.
How could you be promising people free rumpus rooms when you knew the state of the province's finances?
We looked at diversifying the province at a time when they really needed help. If you have drought, like the wicked drought, you've seen it, it's worse than the 1930s, and people want help, you're going to say, I'll be there to help you. Clearly, that's what they wanted. That's why they voted for us, was to have some help.
But rumpus rooms?
Well, it's part of your house. If you want to fix your porch, or if your wife wants to fix her kitchen cupboards, you decide if you want to upgrade your house. Am I going to tell them exactly what they're going to do?
So had Alan Blakeney lost not just the election, but his marbles?
You would be hard-pressed to find the time when somebody ran an election promising blood and tears, toil and sweat, in the great Churchillian phrase, without offering the electorate anything.
People, though, who admire and respect you kind of think that you let them down in that election.
Well, that well could be. They haven't mentioned it to me, but then they probably wouldn't.
The government was promising everybody a free rumpus room, but you were, I think, just as bad, promising just as much.
That's a possible interpretation. I don't accept it, but it's got some logic to it.
Do you regret it now?
Well, I suppose in hindsight I might have done something different, but if faced with it, faced again with a clear public wish to not to concern themselves with finances, it's not easy for politicians to say, you, the public, are wrong.
When we come back, the bill comes due. And resources, oil, potash, uranium, that was diversification. They couldn't all collapse at once. Wrong. They did. And instead of cutting back, the government of the day turned to boosterism and giveaways.
People who hadn't wanted to hear about debt before the election sure got an earful right after. Devine's treasurer, Gary Lane, told a stunned legislature that the deficit, 1 year's shortfall, would be $1 billion, 4 times what they'd predicted before the election. $1 billion. That had been the whole budget just 10 years earlier.
It was an incredible kind of performance. You just sort of sat there listening to the government explain its financial position, saying, oops, we made a mistake of 400%. And Mr. Lane's explanation for that was, well, of course, we underestimated it before the election because we're politicians. People felt they really had been lied to. And then, of course, there's the hard economic side of it, where the economic pain began to become abundantly clear.
Devine started freezing and firing. The school dental program shut down. The dental nurses called into a hotel conference room for a mass firing. Civil service salaries frozen. User fees on the drug program. Grants to social agencies slashed. Enjoy the carpet, because here comes the bill. To raise cash, Devine sold off the government's pulp mill in Prince Albert, sold off potash, sold off the oil company, a little provincial petrocan.
When water comes out of here...
But instead of paying down debt, Devine borrowed more. Mega projects. $200 million for the Rafferty-Alameda dams. Good politics. This is in his own backyard. But it's so dry, there are big doubts Rafferty will ever fill up with water. In Regina, a new refinery to upgrade the province's heavy crude oil. It's half owned and run, when it runs, by Federated Co-op, which got quite a deal. Devine and the Conservatives in Ottawa put up $800 million. The Co-op, a neat 1,000.
I've said for years and years in Saskatchewan, we're going to produce fertilizer here, even if I have to do it myself.
It didn't come to that. Devine hooked up with Cargill, the giant American grain company with revenues 10 times Saskatchewan's. They'd share profits in the fertilizer plant, but guess who took 85% of the risk?
Never lend money or guarantee money to any operation where, if it fails, the sponsors don't lose a potful as well.
If it's such a good deal, Cargill, they're big boys. They can take some risk.
Well, all right, then what if they'd have built it in the United States?
Fine. Well, if the enterprise can't stand its investment cost, then perhaps they should go somewhere else.
But that doesn't sound like an NDPer talking. I mean, you're supposed to be the soft-touch socialists, and conservatives are the people who know how to make business tick.
Well, I don't know about that, but all I know is that when you're putting public money at risk, there ought to be some payback for the public over and above the economic activity which may result from it.
Small-time thinking. Devine was open for business and chased it to Hong Kong. Mini Saskatchewan embassies here and in London, Zurich, Minneapolis. Graham Taylor, the former Devine cabinet minister, ran Hong Kong, which cost $800,000 a year, including $18,000 a month rent on his 5-story condo. The New York office in Rockefeller Center is still open. It has sold things, primarily pierogies. $175,000 worth of pierogies from Saskatoon Fresh Pack. Open for business, and the promoters waltzed right in. Introducing Supercart, $500,000, and this was the only cart they ever saw.
Come all the way from California to make Saskatchewan the shopping cart center of the world. They lose more shopping carts in Los Angeles in 10 minutes than we use in Saskatchewan in 10 years.
Move on to tractors. Weyburn needs jobs. Devine had another $1 million. Local investors, $400,000, and the Australian promoter was full of promises.
By the third year, we should have some 300 people working inside the plant.
But he took off, leaving one forlorn off-track, as they called it. Now the city would like to use it just to mow the ditches.
We've got some of it fixed, but there's other parts that still have to be repaired. It's just not up to snuff yet.
What was going through people's minds? What was going through the voters' mind? I mean, this is my money. What's going on here?
They lost track of that somewhere. Somewhere along the line, in the last 20 years, with governments all over spending, getting on the air. So, politicians, we used to sit around by the hour thinking up new things, you know. And if we weren't thinking them up, people would come and tell us new things. So this was the idea. There was no bottom to the well. Government could give us everything. And now, when governments all over Canada, and especially in Saskatchewan, are broke and they're in trouble, the people are turning on the politicians, and so tough luck. I guess that's the chances you take when you're a politician. It wasn't all their fault. It was mostly their fault, but the people went right along with it, most of them.
If there's any one thing Canadians agree upon, it's that Medicare is sacred. Give the doctors what they need, never close a hospital. Nonsense. When we forward, coming up.
Do you know why hemorrhoids itch and hurt?
Too, in the face of a doctor's strike that bordered on insurrection, there was talk of overthrowing the government. So health care is sacred in Saskatchewan, but the province can no longer afford all its health care. It's got, for example, 132 hospitals, almost as many as Ontario with 10 times the population. Close a hospital? Terrible hardship? You decide.
It's not written down anywhere, but out here everybody knows the rule. You're not a real Saskatchewan town unless you have an elevator and some tracks, a main street with a bank, a Chinese restaurant, and a beer parlor, a memorial arena down at the end, and always a hospital. The Dinsmore Health Center, 90 minutes out of Saskatoon. Inside, the place is a tomb. 40 people work here, full or part-time, and it costs $850,000 a year to operate. But where are the patients? Baby Oren has the croup turned into pneumonia. And who else?
We have an elderly man waiting placement down our long-term care wing. We have a lady in with terminal cancer, and family is away, and we're looking after their mother that has MS.
10 sick beds here with just 2 sick people in them. In the emergency room, no emergencies, plenty of shrouds. As for the nursery, they haven't delivered a baby here in 5 years. The action is over on the other side.
There you go.
12 people in the old folks section. It's called an integrated health facility. But do you need a staff of nurses, a doctor, and an emergency room for this? Not according to the people who run it, the board of the Midwest Health District.
Well, you've got, what, 8 hospitals in this area? 8?
Right.
How many do you really need? Just between you and me.
Between you, 2.
2. How did you get all these hospitals in this area? Did it have anything to do with medicine, economics, or was it politics?
Mostly politics. Yeah, that's
What happened?
particularly the newer ones, the facilities that have been built, the integrated facilities, and yeah, it's strictly politics, a lot of it.
Strictly politics. Drive around the grain towns of the Midwest Health District, and the little hospitals are almost as thick on the ground as gas stations. They outnumber the liquor stores 4 to 1. Lucky Lake is typical. With just 341 souls, not counting the farms, they nonetheless lucked out on a hospital. In 1986, election year, the province gave them the Lucky Lake Health Center. It has 8 sick beds, but last year just 1 or 2 were used at any given time. Operating cost, $817,000. A 20-minute drive down Highway 42, and you're in Beachy on Snakebite Creek. Here it's pretty much the same story, empty beds. Dinsmore, Lucky Lake, Beachy, Kyle, Elrose, Milden, Rosetown, Outlook. 8 hospitals for 16,500 people. To match that in Toronto, they'd have to open a 10-bed hospital every 3 months for the next 75 years.
I'm told it's as simple as this, that your MLA here was the Speaker of the House under the Conservatives. He had a lot of clout, and he got you hospitals, whether they made sense or not.
Yeah, 7 of the 8 hospitals are in this riding. And realistically, whatever government's been in power, I think this riding's had their feet under the cabinet table for 20 years. Tory or NDP or whatever. So, there it is, yeah. A lot of them are political hospitals.
How political? When debt problems really started to bite, the divine government slashed away at health spending. At the legislature, there were fired dental nurses on the front steps, and inside, NDPers mad as hell.
I want to know, will you now listen?
I am elected to do what I believe is right, and I will do what I believe is right.
So tough talk, but out in the Midwest Health District, the brand new hospitals kept coming. Kyle, 1989, 30% occupancy, $3 million to build and $850,000 a year to run. Cost of the plaque on the wall, $850. Install. Milden, 1989, another $1 million. 10 sick beds and just 1.5 of them used. Courtesy, Grant Devine.
When the economy was going down, when you faced all these budget problems, why in heaven's name were you opening more hospitals?
We made integrated facilities with senior citizens so that we could take seniors facilities plus a smaller and smaller acute care and put them together. And that's...
I mean, tell me with a straight face that Saskatchewan really needs all those little hospitals.
Well, rural Saskatchewan is half the population of this province, okay? Half the population. And if you're going to write them off and say you all have to come to Regina and Saskatoon...
But they do anyway.
No.
Get pregnant, get your arm caught in the baler, and it's hello, Saskatoon. There's the hospital on the campus of the University of Saskatchewan. Across town, St. Paul's. Then there's the old city hospital. And what's this? The brand new city hospital. $140 million worth of hospital, and inside, not a nurse, not a doctor, not a patient. Saskatoon has too many hospital beds. They started closing them at other hospitals, but with this, like a bad date, it was too late to back out. The equipment's coming in. Here's the Swivette concealed toilet, imported from California at $8,000 apiece. The king of bedpans. And beware of ever closing a hospital. Former Liberal Finance Minister Dave Stewart found that in Mossbank.
I'd had a study done, and nobody on the Mossbank Hospital Board, nor any of their close relatives, had used the Mossbank Hospital for 2 years. And I used the statistics, and the chairman said, who cares? We need it, we want it in case we need it. They used Moose Jaw and Regina. And I said, well, you can't have it both ways. Well, they said, yes, we can. And so finally, we used up, we talked about the Chamber of Commerce, if the hospital closed, they'd lose the druggist and the doctor and so on. And I knew that would hurt the little town. And finally, the chairman says, okay, I might as well give it to you. We've given you more Liberal votes there than most areas in Saskatchewan. And we've done it for a long time. You close that hospital, and that's the last Liberal vote you'll get from this gang. We closed it, and that happened. So
25 years later.
I don't think they still get Liberal votes, too many in that area. They never forgave us.
Well, no more. Provincial Health Minister Louise Simard is laying down the law.
We simply must eliminate the deficit.
Their hospital and public health board members from around the province called into Regina to hear the new facts of life. More than 500 health boards in this province, 10 hospital boards which have no hospitals, but all of them hold meetings and spend money. Simard will reduce them to about 25, and they'll have to start cutting back.
If you really want to save money, why don't you just go through and close 2/3 of the hospital? I mean, I was talking to a guy back there who said the last kid born in his hospital was his daughter. She's 18 years old now and has smashed up 3 cars. Now, I mean, why are you keeping the hospital open?
Well, because health reform is not just cost-cutting. It is developing a system that allows us to provide a very comprehensive range of health services.
What all that means out in the Midwest Health District is close hospitals. Milden has already been turned into an old folks' home. Can't afford the politics.
We get the politicians we deserve, and we've got what we deserve. We went into elections, we had hot tub promises and no gas tax and rebates and fix your rec room and the government will match your dollars. We had all that garbage, and we all bought into it, and that's who we voted for, and that's what we've got.
The party's over, that's what they're all saying. But down here in the bottom of Saskatchewan, right near the Montana border, the pride of Coronac. $3.7 million, and they're only now moving in. 20 minutes down the road, Rock Glen, and the new Rock Glen Health Center. It's not just new, it's brand new. They haven't even set up the beds yet in the acute care wing. Over on the other side, the chronic care section, Norman Gording. He slipped on the ice and broke his hip New Year's. 3 months later, he's still here. In Rock Glen, if you're lucky enough to get a patient, you look after him.
Oh, it's very good. It's really out of this world. We can go down and have our eats in the cafeteria just like we do it if we go downtown to the cafe.
Politics. There was a by-election here 4 years ago, and it turned into a nasty fight between Devine's candidate and Romano's NDP. Liberal Ralph Goodale had resigned the seat to run federally.
Mr. Devine and his candidate were literally promising brand new hospitals in virtually every community, which was obviously grossly extravagant and beyond the bounds of all reason. Meantime, Mr. Romano was circulating material indicating that the Conservatives were going to close all of the hospitals, and maybe it was Mr. Romano's warning that all the hospitals were going to be closed that prompted Mr. Devine to promise that a whole series of new hospitals would be open, and the political process was then engaged, and on it went. What it seems to me is required
But just on that point, the Conservatives got elected and Rock Glen got a hospital.
Exactly.
And this week in Saskatchewan, the axe fell. 51 of the little hospitals, 8 beds or less, have been given 6 months to close up, turn themselves into clinics or old folks' homes. The newest ones, Rock Glen and Coronac, are included. On top of that, Regina's newest big hospital teach at the end of 6 months, you'll find out what's really essential. Try it in corporations, too. Sound redneck? Well, coming up, agriculture, but wheat's on welfare. For its size, the province has more old people and more natives than any other. In fact, one university study says that half of all births within 10 years will be native, and those natives who live on reserves, by law, pay no tax. So who's going to pay it back? Today, 1 in 3 employees in Saskatchewan gets paid by government. Maybe Saskatchewan has to think in entirely different terms about its amount of government.
It is perhaps the finest, most elegant building anywhere in Canada. Sentinel of the Prairies, they call it. The marble came from Italy, Cyprus, and Sweden. The oak from Ontario, Quebec, Vermont. And when it was finished back in 1912, the government paid cash. Today, the Saskatchewan government couldn't buy an Atco trailer without borrowing the money. Forget building anything. The problem is day-to-day bills.
I am convinced we're doing the correct thing, and I am prepared to be defeated doing what I think is the proper thing than to being reelected on doing the wrong thing.
What do your backbenchers think of this? I mean, I talk to people who say they're tearing up their NDP cards. You're just as bad as the others. You're just as tough. You're mean.
We're having difficulties within the party. I don't think it's a large number of people in the party, but certainly it's a significant minority that has to be paid attention to.
Start with Barbara Byers, a former social worker who now runs the Saskatchewan Federation of Labor, some days from the civil service picket line.
We've had 10 years of a conservative agenda, and some people would contend longer than 10 years because since Romano's been elected, the contention is that there hasn't been a lot of changes.
But I mean, your friends, the NDP government, I mean, they say they have no choice.
Sure they do. They have lots of choices. I mean, they have choices when it comes to taxation. They have choices when it comes to looking at what needs to be done. I mean, in terms of reforming the healthcare system, our members know the reforms. But how come it's a healthcare worker, somebody who is an orderly or a ward aide in a hospital, or a nurse that's asked to give up their job, while at the same time, doctors who could be put on salary aren't asked to do that?
The head of your Saskatchewan Federation of Labor, your political ally, thinks you're a sellout.
Well, Ms. Byers and I have agreed to disagree on this. My challenge to her and the trade union movement is, show me the alternative.
Well,
and there has been no alternative.
Put the doctors on salary and tax the rich, but give the social workers a raise.
Oh, well, these are great words. But in the province of Saskatchewan, we have something like 400,000 taxpayers, less than that. Less than 1% earn $100,000 or more a year, already have one of the highest income tax rates in the country. What am I going to do? Tax them out of the province? It's not an option.
And Grant Devine? He doesn't feel sorry for Romano either.
I mean, we took this province from way left-wing, Eric, to right into the, frankly, the 21st century politically, so that you can talk about balancing and privatizing and being out there diversifying and open for some business. I mean, there's more to this province than just government.
Maybe so, but it's the government, the NDP cabinet, that had to retreat to a conference room and face a cold fiscal shower after Devine's binge of the 80s.
We're like a household that every year is spending more than we are taking in, and we've run our credit cards pretty well to the limit.
Their new budget still had a $300 million deficit, enough to build 3 Sentinels of the Prairie. Forget rock solid, the credit rating is shot, and even the Teachers Union Pension Fund can't normally buy Saskatchewan bonds.
What would Tommy Douglas have thought about seeing his province with a BBB bond rating, junk bonds, below investment grade, garbage credit rating?
I think he wouldn't have believed, he would have found it difficult to believe. That would be so far from anything that Tommy Douglas imagined, so far from the fundamental value system that he shared with the Saskatchewan people, that he would...
These are people who paid their bills.
He would be like I am, breathless.
Al Johnson was a civil servant, a deputy minister no less, before Barbara Byers was born. He was deputy minister of finance in Saskatchewan under Tommy Douglas, then a deputy in Ottawa, later president of the CBC.
When you worked here, you ran the government out of the legislature. Downtown Regina now is full of glass towers and all kinds of buildings, full of all kinds of departments that didn't exist when you were here. Still 1 million people. Are people that much better off for that much more government?
I don't want to knock the public services, and I don't want to knock governments.
You're a lifelong public servant.
That's right. But I do find myself wondering why we can't get along with less.
Maybe they'll have to get along with a lot less before Saskatchewan comes straight.
This is the cabinet table, which I think was expanded in the 80s. This is the cabinet table from 1912 to 1956. Tommy Douglas
and they still and you still got the roads paved. You
well, they weren't quite as paved in 1956 as they are now.
The school teachers got paid, and we had hospitals.
Yes, we had smaller government. There's no doubt about it.
I guarantee you they could close the Department of Agriculture down. For 3 months, they'd have to send a letter to most farmers to tell them it had disappeared. There's an office building near where I live in Regina, and I asked the person that worked there, what do they do in there? And they do something like liaison between K and U, she said. And I said, well, please tell me, what's K and U? Kindergarten and university. I said, what's the liaison between kindergarten and university? Well, she says, we do this and that. An hour later, I said, okay, you've said all that. Now, what do you do? And honest to God, I don't think they do hardly anything. They write papers and position papers. I think they could close that whole building up. You'd never see one change in the education system.
And what about Alan Blakeney, premier in the 70s, and from a party that practically invented liaising and consulting?
My view is that the political leaders should, as carefully as they can, say what they want done, tell the deputies, that's it, now do it, and if you need to consult with someone else, well, there's a great little gadget called the telephone. Get busy and consult, sort it out. Don't have a whole series of interdepartmental committees and coordinating functions and liaison sections. This is the way to just everybody spending their time at meetings doing nothing but talking to each other. That's not government. That's bureaucracy. That is what the public are mad about, and they've got every right to be mad about.
And what about interest groups, fueled by government grants and the media?
There developed a whole parallel political system so that instead of having to join a political party to have some influence on public affairs, in which case in a political party you had to make compromises. You had to make the choices from the constituency level on up. Because you knew you had to pay for them. Now you can enter into the political process cost-free.
With an interest group, but if you put enough pressure...
Arguing that interest, the priorities of that interest group are absolute, and you don't have to make any choices.
We are now talking about rights, and people's rights and entitlements. The rhetoric of rights is something that's really a late 70s, early 80s, and later 80s creation. We used to talk about, we didn't use the word, but claims. You know, I think I ought to get some of this. Now, that's one thing. To say that I've got a claim to this, and you should listen to me because I got a claim here.
Could be a raise, could be a subsidy.
Right. But when someone says, I've got a right, note the difference. We've got to get people saying, look, there aren't any absolute rights, except perhaps not to be shot by the police. After that, you've got a claim that's got to be balanced against someone else's, because no, there's not black and whites in this world. All the world's a shade of gray, and it's time people realize that. And that's what we've got to get back in the public mind.
And what does that mean for debt and for deficits?
Well, it just means that when people insist that money be spent, you have to say, yeah, you're saying that money has been spent. But understand that this means that other people are going to have to pay higher taxes. And they think they have got a right not to pay higher taxes in order to meet your claim.
Most of the time, I drove myself, made the speech, made it up myself. People said, well, that was easy. You always made the same damn speech for 25 years anyway. Maybe I did.
And was it all the public's fault? Or did puffed-up politicians splurge a little bit on themselves, too?
I can remember being in the airport about 3 years ago, and a girl came in, looked around, very importantly, checked the telephone, went out. I was in the Air Canada Lounge in Regina. Then in came a cabinet minister, I won't name him. He came in. He had 3 people with him. They checked her out. She said, the telephone's fine, sir. I thought it was the Maharaja of somewhere else. I knew him. I wasn't very impressed. He phoned, then he put the phone down. I said, where are you going? He said, Vienna. I said, you're kidding. They're going over to the GATT. Well, he went over, and Grant Devine went over, and I heard they never got any closer than 20 miles to where the meeting was. And they took people with them. That's nonsense.
In the late 70s, we became rich and as a nation, and then it dropped off, and the public has never accommodated to the loss of our wealth, or alternatively, the governments haven't forced them to face the issues. You can blame it on who you like, but some combination of governments and their citizens has stopped us from making realistic decisions.
And in the meantime, we're topping up with borrowed money, except Saskatchewan. End of the line.
End of the line for Saskatchewan. End of the line for 2 or 3 other provinces. Some other people have got some running room left, but it's getting to be end of the line for all of them.
You feel good. That's Monday on CTV's Canada AM.
Comments to CTV W5, Box 565, Station F, Toronto, Ontario, M4Y 2L8, or fax us at 416-609-7427. We'll have more on Saskatchewan in the weeks coming up. Good night.